The forest was dense and silent, filled with shadows that seemed to move on their own. Smoke from a distant fire curled slowly through the trees. Allura's breath came in quick gasps as she crept forward, her sharp eyes scanning the ground. She had been sent alone to scout the enemy's position. The warning was clear. This place was full of danger, traps laid to catch anyone who was careless. But Allura was confident. She was fast, smart, and had survived many battles before. She didn't expect this to be different than her footsteps were. Light, but a sudden crunch echoed sharply. Time seemed to freeze. Allura's heart jumped. Before she could react, the ground beneath her feet shifted. A hidden spike shot up with a terrifying speed. She barely had time to cry out. Suddenly, a strong arm caught her, pulling her back with a force that saved her life. The man's body took the full impact of the trap, the sharp spikes piercing through his armor and skin. The pain was immediate and raw, but he did not let go of her. "I've got you," he said, his voice rough but steady. Allura looked up, stunned. The human's eyes met hers, calm and fierce. His name was Yarok, a soldier from a faraway world. They had never met before this mission, but now, he was the reason she was alive. Yarok gritted his teeth and pushed her away gently, grimacing as he fell to one knee. Blood seeped from deep wounds, but he stayed focused. Around them, the enemy was closing in, their alien shapes moving quickly through the shadows. "We have to move," Yarok said, struggling to stand. His body was weak, but his spirit was not. Allura supported him, helping him walk as they fled through the thick trees. Every step was agony for Yarok, but he refused to stop. The enemy's growls grew louder, closer. They could hear the crack of weapons and the hum of alien technology. Suddenly, the forest exploded with light and sound. Enemy troops had found them. Allura's mind raced. How could they escape? She looked around desperately, spotting a narrow cave entrance hidden behind thick vines. "This way," she urged, pulling Yarok toward the dark opening. They slipped inside, just as enemy fire rained down on the forest floor. Inside the cave, the air was cool and damp. Yarok leaned against the rough wall, breathing heavily. Allura knelt beside him, tears pricking her eyes as she touched his bloodied chest. "Why did you save me?" she whispered. Yarok gave a weak smile. "Because no one deserves to die alone, especially not you." For a moment, the sounds of war seemed far away, but the silence did not last long. Footsteps echoed in the cave entrance. They were not alone. Allura grabbed a sharp rock and stood, ready to defend them both. Yarok tried to stand, but his strength was failing. The enemy soldiers appeared, their weapons trained on the two wounded fighters. One stepped forward, speaking in a harsh, alien tongue. Allura did not understand the words, but she felt the threat clear. Yarok raised his hand slowly. "Wait," he said in his broken alien language. "We don't want to fight." The enemy hesitated. Allura saw the surprise in their eyes. No one had expected the human to speak their language or offer peace. A tense silence filled the cave. Then, the enemy commander signaled and lowered his weapon. The soldiers followed. Allura and Yarok exchanged a glance. Could this be the chance to end the battle, or was it a trap? Yarok's pain was growing worse, but he smiled faintly at Allura. "I think it was worth every pain to save you." She nodded, her heart pounding with hope and fear. This was only the beginning of a war that would change everything for humans, aliens, and the universe itself. Outside, the forest burned, but inside the cave, two unlikely allies had found a reason to fight not against each other, but for something greater. The cave was small and dark, but it offered shelter from the storm of bullets and chaos raging outside. Yarok leaned heavily against the jagged wall, the blood seeping from his wounds, slowing his breath. Allura sat beside him, her hands trembling as she tried to stop the bleeding with strips torn from her torn uniform. The enemy soldiers had left. Them alone for now, but the tension in the air was thick. Alara's mind raced. How had a simple scouting mission turned into this nightmare? She had been so sure she could handle it alone. Now here they were, an injured human and an alien girl, trapped together with enemies lurking nearby. She looked at Yarek, his face pale but determined. "We can't stay here," Yarek said quietly. "They will come back." Alara nodded. "I know, but you can barely stand." Yarek forced a smile. "I won't die here, not yet." Her heart tightened. There was something about him, a fierce will to survive that went beyond pain or fear. She found herself admiring it, even in the darkest moment. Suddenly, a soft noise came from the cave entrance. Both froze, eyes fixed on the shadowed opening. It was not the heavy footsteps of the enemy soldiers. It was lighter, gentler. A small figure stepped in. It was a child, a boy, no more than 10 years old, with wide eyes full of curiosity and fear. He looked between Alara and Yarek, unsure what to do. Alara's voice softened. "Are you alone?" The boy nodded slowly. "I ran away from the fighting. I didn't want to hurt anyone." Yarek's brow furrowed. "You're brave." The boy hesitated, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a small device. It was a communicator, cracked but still working. "I can help you," he said. "I know a safe place nearby. It's hidden, and the others don't know about it." Alara looked at Yarek. His wounds were bad, but with help, maybe they could survive. The boy's offer was a risk, but it was their only chance. "Let's go," Alara said, steadying Yarek as he struggled to rise. Outside the cave, the forest was scarred by fire and battle. Alien ships hovered in the distance, searching for any survivors. The boy led them through narrow paths only he knew, avoiding patrols and traps as they moved. Alara learned the boy's name was Talon. He was the son of a local village leader, caught in the middle of the war. His eyes shone with a mix of sadness and hope that seemed to touch her deeply. Hours passed like this, through dark woods, past broken trees, and across rocky hills. Yarek's pain was a constant shadow, but the boy's quiet courage kept them going. At last, they reached a hidden valley, surrounded by towering cliffs and thick vegetation. In the center was a small settlement, shielded from the war's reach. Talon smiled. "Here, you'll be safe, for now." Alara knelt beside Yarek, who closed his eyes, exhausted but alive. She looked up at the sky, the stars faint behind the smoke. This war was far from over. But for the first time since the trap was sprung, she felt a glimmer of hope. Together, with this strange human and brave boy, maybe they could find a way to survive and maybe even end the fighting. The pain had been worth it, if only to reach this moment. The hidden valley was quiet compared to the raging war beyond its walls. Small huts made of stone and wood stood among thick trees, with soft lights flickering inside. Alara, Yarek, and Talon entered cautiously, their bodies tired but their minds alert. The villagers watched them silently, their eyes filled with suspicion and fear. War had left its mark on everyone here. Yet, when they saw Yarek's wounds, the village healer stepped forward without hesitation. Her hands were gentle but skilled as she examined him. "We don't have much medicine," she said, her voice low. "But we'll do what we can." Alara stayed close, grateful for the kindness but knowing time was running out. The enemy would not stop searching. They needed a plan. That night, as Yarek rested, Alara and Talon spoke in hushed tones by the fire. The boy told her about the war, how his people had been caught between two great armies, how the fighting had destroyed families and homes. His voice trembled when he spoke of his parents, taken by soldiers during a raid. Alara's heart ached. She had seen war before, but hearing it through a child's eyes made it real in a new way. "We can't let this continue," she said firmly. "There has to be a way to stop the bloodshed." Talon nodded slowly. "There is a legend about a weapon, hidden deep in the old ruins beyond the mountains. It's said to have power enough to end wars. But no one who's gone looking has ever returned. Alara looked at him, surprised. Maybe that's our chance. If we find it, we can stop this war. Talon hesitated, then said, I know the way. Before she could answer, Yarek stirred. He opened his eyes, weak but alive. We don't have time to wait, he said, his voice low but steady. If this weapon is real, we must find it. For everyone's sake. Alara helped him sit up, her resolve growing stronger. The pain in his body was nothing compared to the weight of the war crushing their worlds. The next morning, the villagers prepared them for the journey. Talon packed supplies. The healer gave Yurek some herbs to ease the pain, and Alara checked their weapons. As they set out toward the mountains, Alara felt a strange mix of fear and hope. The path ahead was dangerous, filled with unknown traps and enemy patrols. But with Yarek by her side, and Talon's knowledge, she believed they might just survive. The sun rose higher, casting long shadows on the ground. Somewhere out there in the forgotten ruins lay a secret that could change everything. And Alara was ready to find it, even if it cost her everything. The climb toward the ancient ruins was steeper and colder than Alara had imagined. Sharp winds whipped through the jagged rocks, and the air grew thin with every step. Yarek's wounds slowed them, but his determination never wavered. Talon led the way, his small frame surprisingly sure-footed on the treacherous paths. The ruins loomed ahead, vast stone structures half buried in moss and ice. Time had worn away much of their shape, but the power they held was still clear. Strange symbols etched deep into the walls glowed faintly in the fading light, filling the air with an eerie hum. Alara's heart pounded. She had heard stories of this place, whispered legends told by villagers to scare children. Now she was standing in its shadow, unsure what to expect. They entered cautiously. The ground beneath them was cracked, and the silence was broken only by their footsteps and distant echoes. Suddenly, the floor shifted beneath Alara's foot. A trap! Before she could shout, a net sprung up, wrapping tightly around her. Alara! Yarek yelled, rushing forward despite the sharp pain in his side. Talon searched frantically for a way to release her, but the trap was cleverly made to hold even the strongest captive. Without thinking, Yarek threw himself onto the net, using his body to shield Alara from harm. The net's edges pressed against his skin, cutting deeply as it tightened. I won't let them take you, he gasped, grimacing but holding firm. Alara struggled against the bindings, but Yarek's sacrifice gave her a chance. With Talon's help, she found a hidden release mechanism carved into the wall. A soft click, and the net loosened. Yarek collapsed to the ground, breathing hard, blood staining his armor. Alara crawled to his side, tears in her eyes. Why do you do this? She asked softly. He looked up, pain in his eyes but a fierce smile on his lips. Because saving you means saving us all. Their moment was shattered by a deep rumble. The ruins began to shake. Stones fell from above, dust filled the air, and distant alarms blared. The traps! We triggered something! Talon shouted. They had no choice but to run, carrying Yarek as the ancient ruins threatened to bury them all. Outside, the cold air hit their faces. The weapon, the hope for peace, was close, but so was danger. Alara knew this fight was far from over. But with Yarek's courage and Talon's knowledge, they still had a chance to change the fate of their worlds. The ruins trembled behind them as Alara, Yarek, and Talon fled down the mountain path. Dust and debris tumbled from the collapsing stones, and the ground shook beneath their feet. Yarek's breathing was ragged, each movement sending sharp pain through his body, but he refused to slow down. Alara supported him, her arms steady despite her own exhaustion. Keep moving, Yarek urged, sweat and blood mixing on his face. We can't let them catch us now. Talon glanced back nervously. I don't see any enemy patrols yet, but the alarms will bring reinforcements soon. The forest below was dark and tangled, but it promised safety. They hurried, shadows chasing them in the fading light. Suddenly, a loud crack echoed through the trees. Alara turned sharply. 3 figures emerged from the shadows, weapons raised. Enemy soldiers, fast and ready to fight. Alara's heart sank, but she stepped forward, standing in front of Yurik and Talon. We're not your enemies, she said, voice steady despite the fear gripping her chest. We want to end this war. The soldiers hesitated, but the leader lowered her weapon slightly. We've heard rumors, the leader said, about a weapon hidden in the ruins. Yurik managed a weak nod. We found it. But it's dangerous. It could save lives or destroy everything. The soldiers exchanged glances. Then, slowly, they lowered their weapons. Then maybe we should work together, the leader said. Alara blinked, surprised. Could enemies become allies? Was this the chance to change the war's course? Before anyone could answer, a loud explosion shook the ground nearby. A second patrol had found them. Chaos erupted as bullets and energy blasts filled the air. Alara grabbed Yurik's hand. We have to fight. Together. The battle was fierce, but united, they held their ground. Yurik's pain was forgotten in the heat of battle. Alara fought with a fierce determination she didn't know she had. Talon stayed close, using his small size to move quickly and help where he could. When the fighting finally stopped, the enemy soldiers and the human alien group stood panting but alive. The lines between friend and foe blurred in the smoke. The leader approached Alara. If we survive this war, it will be because we learned to fight together. The weapon is real, and its power is too great for anyone to control alone. Alara nodded, looking at Yurik. Then we have a new mission. To protect it and to protect each other. In the heart of war, a fragile alliance was born. The pain and sacrifice had been worth it if it meant a chance for peace. Days passed in the hidden valley as the fragile alliance began to take shape. Former enemies now shared food, medicine, and stories of the war. The villagers who had once feared outsiders now looked to Alara, Yurik, and the soldiers as symbols of hope. But beneath the calm, the threat of war still loomed large. Yurik's wounds were healing slowly, and Alara stayed by his side, helping him every step of the way. Their bond had grown deeper, forged through pain and trust. Talon was no longer just a guide, he had become a brother to both of them. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the mountains, the alliance gathered around a fire. The leader of the enemy soldiers spoke quietly. The weapon in the ruins, it's not just a tool. It's a test. It chooses who can use its power. Alara frowned. A test? What kind of test? The ancient guardians who created it, the leader explained, built trials to ensure only those with the purest intentions can unlock it. If anyone tries to use it for war or greed, it will destroy them instead. Yurik looked thoughtful. So the weapon could be the key to peace. But only if we pass this test. Suddenly, a scout ran into the clearing, breathless and wide-eyed. Enemy forces are gathering nearby. They've learned about the Alliance and are coming to destroy us. Tension cracked the quiet night like lightning. The fragile peace was under threat. Alara stood, determination burning in her eyes. We won't let them destroy what we've built. We fight not for power, but for peace. The group prepared, quickly sharpening weapons, setting defenses, and steadying their hearts. Yurik's pain was still there, but he stood tall, ready to protect their new family. As dawn broke, the enemy attacked. The battle was brutal and desperate. But this time, the fighters were united by more than survival. They fought for hope, for a future beyond endless war. Alara moved through the chaos with fierce courage, protecting those who could not protect themselves. Yurik fought beside her. every strike fueled by the promise of a better world. Talon ran between the lines, guiding allies and rescuing the wounded. When the dust finally settled, many lay injured, but the enemy had been pushed back. Alara looked to Yarok, breathless but alive. "We survived," he smiled weakly. "Because we stand together." The path to the weapon and peace was still dangerous. But with trust, courage, and sacrifice, they would face whatever came next. And the pain had all been worth it. The sun rose slowly over the battered valley, casting golden light on a land forever changed. The scars of war were deep, but so was the hope now growing among the survivors. Alara, Yarok, and Talon stood together, looking toward the ancient ruins where their future awaited. The final trial of the weapons test lay before them. No longer just enemies or strangers, they were united by a bond forged in fire and sacrifice. Each step toward the ruins was heavy. With meaning, this was more than a mission. It was a chance to change the fate of countless lives. Inside the ruins, the air hummed with ancient power. The walls glowed softly, and the symbols carved into stone pulsed with light. The weapon was not a machine or a gun, but a force that responded. To their hearts, Alara reached out, her hand trembling. As she touched the glowing surface, a voice echoed in her mind, not words, but feelings of peace, courage, and unity. Yarok stepped forward, placing his hand beside hers. The pain in his body seemed to fade, replaced by a calm strength. Talon followed, small but steady. The weapon's light enveloped them, and they felt a wave of power unlike anything before. It did not belong to one person or one race, it belonged to all who wished for peace. Outside, the Alliance watched and waited, the tension thick. Then, slowly, the glow spread from the ruins, shining bright enough to be seen for miles. The war that had threatened to tear their worlds apart began to falter. Leaders on both sides received the message, a sign that the time for fighting was over. Months later, the valley flourished as a place where humans and aliens lived side by side. Alara and Yarok walked together through fields of new growth, their hands clasped tightly. "Do you think it was worth it?" Alara asked softly. Yarok smiled, his eyes shining with hope. "Every pain, every scar, it brought us here, together." The weapon's power had not destroyed or conquered. Instead, it had healed wounds far deeper than flesh. It had shown that, even in the darkest moments, humanity and all life could rise above hatred. And in that light, a new future began, one where no one had to face the darkness alone.